Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again. And boy, have I got a tale that'll leave you drowning in terror tonight. 5,000 feet beneath the surface, where sunlight dies, where pressure would crush your bones like chalk, where something ancient has been sleeping since before humans crawled out of the primordial ooze. The deep-sea researchers understand something about the abyss. They know better than to disturb what lives in the trenches where mountains sink into darkness and the sea floor breathes. Sebastian Rykard thought he was just doing a routine night inspection on Nautilus Station 13. Check the vents, log the pressure readings, make sure 5,000 feet of black water wasn't finding new ways to kill them. But when that first cold drop hit his eye, when he saw that sideways face staring back at him through the duct, he realized something terrifying. They weren't alone down there. They'd never been alone. They'd built their research station right on top of something vast, something old, something that was finally waking up. This is your late night creature feature. When the deep notices you, it never forgets. Before we begin, I'm curious. Where are you listening from tonight? Alone in your room? Driving through empty roads? Walking through the woods? Drop a comment and let me know. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's descend into the abyss. They're coming from the deep. Chapter 1. My name's Sebastian Rykard, and I'm writing this because someone needs to remember what Nautilus Station 13 really was, before it became something else. On paper, the station was a marvel. A triumph of deep-sea engineering, they called it. In reality, it was a coffin we bolted shut ourselves and sank 5,000 feet into the dark. The station creaked around me while I walked the night inspection route. Nautilus 13 was never truly quiet, even during off hours. The place hummed with low mechanical sounds and the soft whine of recirculating pumps. Steel bulkheads groaned as the pressure outside shifted, little pops and ticks, like knuckles being cracked by an invisible hand. Every sound down here had weight to it. Every flicker of the lights made your heart jump just a little. I'd been on station for 3 months now, long enough for the surface to feel like something that had happened to someone else. Sunlight, wind. The idea of up, long enough to know when Nautilus was breathing normal, and when it was starting to wheeze. Tonight, it was wheezing. The corridor outside Hydro Lab 2 smelled faintly of iodine and metal. I paused by the hatch, checked the pressure indicator. Stable. Then I tapped the glass of the gauge with my knuckle anyway, out of habit. Old divers used to say, trust your eyes, not the instruments. Down here, you learned to trust everything or you died. The overhead LEDs buzzed softly and cast that flat, bluish light that made everyone look a little dead already. Hydro 2. I muttered into the handheld recorder. Pressure nominal. No visible leaks. We used voice logs for redundancy. Power fails, hard drives corrupt. At least you've got audio. Plus, honestly, talking out loud helped keep the walls from closing in. Nina, topside, would compile these into her daily report and send them off to whichever committee or institute needed proof we were still alive. I moved on. The station was a long, branching series of tubes and modules built up over the last decade. 4 main rings, stacked like an offset spine, with labs, bunks, a mess hall, an infirmary, and a moon pool in the belly. Beyond that, the maintenance umbilicals extended to sensor arrays and ROV docks anchored in the silt. Above us, 5,000 feet of black water. Below us, the sloping approach to the trench's edge. To the east, the seafloor dropped out into nothing. Living quarters A, I said quietly, turning into the next corridor. Lighting at 70%. Humidity's still high in this section, requesting extra dehumidifiers if surface logistics ever stops forgetting we exist. A laugh crackled in my ear. You keep sweet-talking them like that, Rykard. We might get a whole box of fresh mold instead. Elijah's voice came through my headset. He sounded tired, but there was a familiar grin underneath it. "Thought you were off comms, Torres," I said, lowering the recorder. "Can't sleep. Pumps sound weird in the aft ballast room, like they're out of sync or something. You hearing it where you are?" I stopped walking and listened. The ever-present mechanical hum was there, the distant whirring, the thudding rhythm of the big circulation system. But underneath it, down in the gut of the station, something did sound off. A stutter in the cadence. A hitch. "Yeah," I said. "Could be just the feedback through the bulkheads. We had a micro-adjustment on buoyancy earlier after the last ROV launch. I'll swing by ballast after I finish Ring 3. "Copy that, Professor," Elijah said. "If we all implode in our sleep, I'm haunting the hell out of you." "Get in line," I said. I clipped the recorder back to my collar and took another step. Something wet squelched under my boot. I frowned and looked down. A thin, clear smear of moisture streaked across the deck plating. It wasn't much, barely more than a footprint-sized drag, but it stood out against the otherwise dry, scuffed gray floor. We had strict regulations about water inside the station. Showers were timed, spill kits everywhere, towels by every hatch. Freestanding water, even a little, meant corrosion, mold, electrical risk. I crouched, touched the smear with my gloved fingers, then rubbed thumb and forefinger together. Not greasy like oil, not sticky like coolant, just water, cold as the air around it. I followed the line of it with my eyes. The smear ran from the middle of the corridor right up to the base of the bulkhead, then vanished beneath a wall panel. "Lena," I said, double-tapping my headset to switch channels. "You seeing any humidity spikes or pipe anomalies on the internal sensors in Ring C?" There was a moment of static, then Lena's voice came through, quiet and clipped. "Checking. No, everything's reading within normal variance." "Why?" "Got a little condensation down here," I said. "Could be from the air system. Or someone came through here dripping like a seal." "Everybody's accounted for," Lena said. "Kira's in Lab 3, Omar's in control, Elijah's aft, Caspian's in the rec module pretending not to be terrified. You're the only one in that section." I stared at the smear. "Copy," I said. "Mark it for maintenance check." "On it," she replied. "And, Seb?" "Yeah?" There was a tiny pause. "Keep your mic open, okay? Just in case." I almost asked in case what, but I knew better. We were all thinking the same thing we never said. If something goes wrong down here, you don't always have time to call for help. Sometimes all you leave behind is a scream on a recording and a spike on a pressure graph. "Mike stays live," I said. I moved on. The deeper into Ring C I walked, the more the station's sound seemed to shift. The hum felt lower, the metal groans longer, like the structure itself was tired. On the outer bulkhead, one of the little portholes was set into the wall, barely the size of a dinner plate, triple-layered glass, rated well beyond our depth. We all knew they were more psychological than practical. You couldn't see much through them. But sometimes, during off hours, we'd stand in front of one just to remind ourselves we were still orbiting Earth and not trapped in some featureless void. I stepped up to it and looked out. Just for a moment, blackness met me, thick and total. Only the faintest scatter of drifting silt caught the glow from our external floods. Beyond that, nothing. No stars, no horizon. Just a slow, endless snowfall of marine snow. Organic detritus drifting down to where old things waited in the dark. Sometimes, if you stared long enough, you thought you saw something moving out there. A shadow crossing behind the rain of particles. A change in the angle of nothingness. I didn't stare long tonight. I finished the loop around Ring C, logged the pressure readings from the fire doors, and cut through to the central junction. The corridor sloped slightly downward toward ballast. The air felt colder down here. Or maybe I was just thinking about the millions of tons of water stacked on our roof. Ballast room now, I reported to the recorder. Audible pump irregularities confirmed. The hatch to ballast was heavy, with extra bracing visible even from this side. I thumbed the interlock, waited for the panel to blink green, and swung it open. The sound hit me like a physical thing. Thudding pumps, cycling valves, the deep, steady churn of the station's lungs. The room was lit by strips of harsh white LEDs. Rows of cylindrical tanks lined the walls, pipes and hoses running like veins and arteries between them. I stood just inside, listening. There it was. Every few seconds, a subtle drag in the rhythm. A slight cough in the machine. "Elijah," I said. "You were right. Portside pump 3 has a hitch in the stroke. Probably air in the line. I'll flag it for a detailed look tomorrow." "Music to my ears," Elijah answered. "I'll baby the settings from here. Last thing we need is unplanned buoyancy changes this far down." "Last thing we need is you calling them buoyancy changes instead of we rise or we drop," I said, but my mind was already elsewhere. Because as I stepped deeper into the ballast room, something else reached my ears, faint, above the mechanical noise, above the hum, a sound like running water, not the whoosh of fluids in the pipes, not the pulsing of the pumps, a drip, one drop, then another, a steady, patient tick, tick, tick. I turned slowly. The drip was coming from the far corner of the room, near the ceiling. One of the broad air ducts cut across there, part of the ventilation system that fed conditioned air into the lower rings. From the center seam of one of the duct's joints, a single bead of liquid gathered, swelled, and dropped to the deck. Another formed, dropped, tiny splashes hitting the metal. My skin crawled. We had liquids everywhere on this station. Coolant, hydraulic fluid, brine, laboratory reagents. None of them were supposed to be inside the air ducts. "Lena," I said, "do we have any alerts on the HVAC system?" "Negative," she replied. "Everything's in the green. What's up?" "I'm seeing a drip from a vent connection in ballast. No discoloration, no smell. Could be condensation, but I trailed off. But we weren't supposed to have condensation either. Not in a room this heavily controlled." "Take a sample?" Lena suggested. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Yeah, I will." I walked under the duct and watched another bead swell slowly from the seam. It was clear, perfectly clear. It caught the overhead light in a way that almost made it look like glass. I held out my hand. The drop fell. It hit my glove and spread cold across the back of my hand, then ran along the wrinkles in the material. For just a moment, the temperature stabbed through the insulation. An intense, needle-like cold, as if the drop had been stored somewhere much colder than our 55-degree interior. "Jesus," I muttered. "What?" "Talk to me," Lena said in my ear. "Nothing," I said. "Just, it's colder than it should be. I'll log it and send it over to Kira in the morning. Maybe we've got a small temp gradient in the duct." A lie, but a small one. Kira had been on edge enough already with the weird sonar readings. I grabbed a sample vial from the wall kit, standard issue in every sensitive room, and caught the next drop in it. 2 more for volume. Then I sealed it, slapped a temporary hazard label on it just to be conservative, and slid it into my left thigh pocket. Then I looked back up. There was more moisture now. The seam along the duct had a thin, glossy line running along it, like condensation on a window. It gathered in multiple spots, forming drops that trembled, swelled, and fell. Tick, tick. "Tick. Seb," Lena said. "You're quiet." "Yeah, I'm going to check the vent further down the line," I said. "If we've got cold air mixing wrong, it might be dripping elsewhere too." "Copy," she replied. "I'll mark it." The duct ran out of the ballast room and into the corridor beyond. I followed it, stepping over a few small puddles forming on the floor. I told myself they weren't getting larger as I passed, even though they were. By the time I reached the intersection above the equipment storage module, the dripping sound was constant, not torrential. Just enough to be unavoidable, drops tapping steel in overlapping rhythms. The station had started to feel damp. "Sebastian?" It was Captain Omar's voice now, heavy and low. "Status on your night walk?" "Ballast pumps irregular but stable. Logged for maintenance. Spotting minor condensation along the HVAC. I'm tracking it now." "Condensation," he repeated. "At this time cycle, all differential gradients should be balanced. Check for pipe leaks." "Already on it," I said. "The last thing we need is humidity corrosion on Ring 3, he said. "You find the source, you tag it, we'll isolate the section and run a purge." "Yes, sir." I cut the channel and looked up at the branch in the ductwork. One section ran forward toward the labs. The other cut sideways over a small access alcove where one of the removable vent grates was set into the ceiling. Water was dripping from that recessed grill. A slow, steady rain of clear drops, hitting the floor in front of the access ladder that was usually stowed there. Only now, someone had left the ladder leaning against the wall, half unfolded, as if they'd meant to climb up and then thought better of it. I frowned. "Who was in C-section maintenance last?" I asked. "Hold on," Lena said, clicking keys. "Maintenance logs show last access to that junction was 6 hours ago. Routine filter check. Done by... Booked as auto-scheduled. No staff signature." "That's not right," I said. "Auto-scheduled doesn't mean auto-completed. Somebody had to file it." "Glitch, maybe," she said. "We've had the odd log bug since the last software push." I stared at the vent. It stared back. Just a standard rectangular grill, riveted into the ceiling, with blackness behind it, and a slow drip in front. "Seb?" Lena said. "What are you doing?" "Going to check it," I said. I grabbed the ladder, unfolded it the rest of the way, and set it directly beneath the vent. It wasn't tall, only a few rungs, but up close like this, the ceiling felt much lower, the shadows around the duct thicker, water ticked against the rungs. Drops spattered on my shoulders and helmet, cold, always that unnatural cold. I climbed, boots ringing hollow on each rung. "I've got eyes on the vent," I reported, more for my own benefit than anyone else's. "I'm going to pop it and see if we've got a loose connector or condensation pooling on the wrong side." "Copy," Lena said. Her voice was too soft. "I'm here." My head brushed the ceiling. I ducked, braced a hand on the edge of the vent, and used the other hand to work the quarter-turn fasteners. 2 were stiff, as if they hadn't been touched in months. One turned easily, slick with the same clear moisture. The grill came loose with a metallic click. Something in the duct shifted. Just air, I told myself. Pressure equalizing, sound playing tricks. I slid the grill aside and clipped it to the retaining hook. Cold, damp air breathed out over my face, carrying the faintest hint of something mineral. Not rot, not mold, more like the inside of a cave. I raised my flashlight. "Sebastian?" Omar's voice came through. "Report?" "Vent is open," I said quietly. "I'm just going to take a quick look." "You do not go climbing into any ducts alone," Omar said. "You understand?" "Just a visual from the ladder," I said. "I'll log a full inspection order if it looks bad." He made a noise that sounded like a reluctant growl but didn't countermand me. I leaned in. The duct beyond the vent was wider than a person, but not by much. Rounded metal walls, insulated, with the main air channel running off to the left and right. Condensation trickled along the bottom, gathering in slow-moving droplets. The beam of my flashlight cut a clean cone through the darkness. Metal, rivets, seams, the vague suggestion of distance. I shifted a little, angled the light left, up along the curve. That's when I heard it. A faint, wet sound. Not the drip. Something like something dragging itself along the metal a few feet ahead. a slow, stick-slip movement. Like an eel or a ray hugging the duct and pulling itself around the bend, every hair on my arm stood up inside my jumpsuit. "Lena," I whispered, "do you hear that?" Static hissed in my ear, then her voice, strained. "Hear what?" Movement. The sound came again, clearer. A soft, damp slide, then a quiet, almost imperceptible click, like cartilage flexing. For a moment, I considered shutting the vent and calling it a night, just filing a report, let maintenance deal with it in the morning with proper tools and 2 people on hand. Instead, I did what had almost gotten me killed on my last assignment. I leaned further in. "Sebastian," Omar said, voice sharp. "Back down from the ladder. That's an order." "1 second," I whispered. I extended my arm fully, pushed the flashlight further around the left-hand corner of the duct. The beam caught something pale. At first my brain tried to make it metal, a pipe, an insulated cable, a trick of reflection. Then it moved. A face slid slowly into view around the bend of the duct. Not upright, but sideways, like someone lying down, their head twisted toward me. The features were wrong, not quite human, not quite anything else. Grayish, translucent skin stretched thin over underlying structures I couldn't parse. No eyebrows, no hair, a flattened nose slit. The mouth too wide by just enough to be unsettling, lips pulled into a faint, motionless, almost curious smile. Where the eyes should have been were 2 smooth, milky orbs that glowed faintly from within, like distant bioluminescent bulbs. Not bright, just enough to catch and hold the light. Those eyes locked on mine. They weren't surprised. They weren't angry. They were studying. My throat closed. For a second I forgot how to breathe. The thing's head tilted a fraction of an inch, as if considering me from this new angle. Its cheek was pressed to the metal, as if the rest of its body were stretched out along the duct behind it. I couldn't see any limbs, but the slick, wet drag on the metal hadn't stopped. It felt like the rest of it was still moving, still rearranging itself. "Sebastian?" Lena's voice was distant, tinny. "What do you see? Say something." I opened my mouth. No sound came out. The thing in the vent didn't blink. I wasn't sure it had eyelids. Its smile widened slightly, just enough to show a hint of inner tissue. No teeth, just a ripple of pale, flexible structures where a human's gums would be. A single drop of water formed on the underside of the duct just in front of its face. It hung there for a moment, swelling, catching the faint glow from those eyes. Then it fell. I didn't move in time. The drop hit me directly in the eye. The cold was instantaneous and brutal, like someone driving an ice pick straight through my pupil into my skull. I recoiled, instinct slamming my head back into the edge of the opening. The ladder shifted under me. I heard myself make a short, strangled sound. The flashlight clattered from my hand, bounced once against the edge of the vent, and fell. The beam spun crazily, carving light across my face, the ceiling, the wall. For just an instant, as my head snapped back, the flashlight beam slashed across the inside of the duct again. The sideways face was closer, much closer, less than a foot from mine. The smile was gone. What replaced it was openness. The suggestion of a mouth unhinging, of inner flesh flexing, of the pale structures behind that almost lip peeling back like flower petals underwater. My heel slipped on a wet rung. The ladder lurched. "Sebastian!" Omar shouted in my ear. "Answer me! What's happening?" I flailed, grabbed for anything. My hand caught the edge of the vent. The metal tore the glove at the palm, bit into my skin. Pain cut through the cold in my eye, sharp and immediate. The ladder slammed back into the wall. My shoulder hit the side hard enough to make the world flash white. The flashlight hit the floor with a crack. The beam died. The drip continued. Tick, tick, tick. I hung there for a second, half in, half out of the vent, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the pumps. My right eye burned. My vision swam with stars and ghost after-images of that sideways face. When I forced myself to look back up into the vent, there was nothing there. Just darkness and the slow slide of clear water along the bottom. Sebastian, Omar's voice was flat and deadly now. Report, now. I swallowed, throat dry. The taste of metal filled my mouth. I realized I'd bitten my tongue. I saw someone, I whispered. Silence on the line. Then Lena again, barely audible. What do you mean, someone? In the vent, I said. My voice sounded small in my own ears. A face. It was wrong. It was looking right at me. You hit your head, Omar said. He was trying to keep his voice steady, rational, but I could hear the thin edge of fear under it. You got a cold drop in your eye. You panicked. You slipped. You need to get checked out by Med, Rykard. I didn't imagine it, I said. My hand was still shaking on the vent lip. I forced it to let go, stepped down one rung, then another. My legs felt like wet rope. It tilted its head, like it was lying there, like it was listening to us through the duct. Sebastian, Lena said quietly, there's no one else in that section with you. Internal motion sensors only show your transponder. My boots hit the deck. I didn't remember the last 2 steps. I turned, braced myself against the wall, and sucked in a breath. The ladder stood under the open vent, dripping. A small pool was forming on the floor now, spreading around the feet of the ladder like a slow-growing shadow. I wiped at my eye. My glove came away wet. It took me a second to realize it wasn't blood. It was just water, clear, ice cold. In my left thigh pocket, the sample vial pressed against my leg like a weighted coin. All right, I said, finally. Okay, I'm coming to Med, but I'm not crazy. Something is in the vents. Elijah's voice cut in, forced and joking, the way he always sounded when he was scared. Man, you say that like it's supposed to be reassuring. No one laughed. Omar exhaled audibly. Close the vent, he said. Tag it, then get yourself checked out. Tomorrow we'll run a full sweep of the HVAC. Until then, nobody goes near the ducts alone. That's a direct order. I climbed the ladder again with hands that weren't entirely steady, swung the grill back into place, and twisted the fasteners. The metal was slick from the moisture. For a second, my fingers slipped, and a fresh shiver ran down my spine. I was certain I'd feel something grab my wrist from the other side. Nothing did. The vent closed. The drip slowed to a few last stubborn drops, then stopped. But as I climbed down and folded the ladder, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been staring back at me hadn't retreated. It had simply moved further down the duct, into the maze above our heads, listening, learning. Med Bay, I said, forcing my legs to carry me down the corridor. Then I want Kira to look at that water sample as soon as she wakes up. You think it's contaminated? Lena asked. I thought of the cold, drilling straight through my eye, of the glowing orbs in that sideways face. I think, I said slowly, it's not ours. Outside the station, beyond the thickness of the hull and the fall of marine snow, something vast shifted in the dark, a slow, patient movement, like a sleeper turning over in its dreams. I didn't see it then, but later, when we pulled the logs and sonar, we'd find the anomaly time-stamped to the exact moment that drop of water hit my eye. The moment the deep really noticed we were here. Chapter 2. The walk to the medbay felt longer than it should have. Every overhead vent I passed, every duct seam, every panel with a shadow beneath it, I felt watched. Not imagined, watched, observed. Like something tracking my steps through the metal. The lighting flickered twice. Just the LEDs recalibrating after ballast load shift, I told myself. But the timing felt deliberate. Medbay was empty except for one humming console monitor and a low blue glow from the diagnostics display. The chair in the center still had Elijah's coffee mug sitting next to it, half full, stained ring on the steel table. Seb. Lena's voice came soft through my headset. Vitals are stable on your biofeed. Sit down, start a pupil check. I'm watching from control. I sank into the chair. My left eye felt raw, like I'd stared into a welding torch. The drops forming in my eyelashes made the world shimmer. The console automatically adjusted angle and swept a green visual across my face. Right eye, reactive. Left eye, irregular dilation. Temperature variance. Hold on. Lena paused. Seb, your left eye temp is 5 degrees colder than ambient. That's impossible, I muttered. I know, she said. The system beeped again. Another warning. Surface anomaly detected on corneal layer. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me. Before I could speak, the medbay hatch opened and Dr. Kira Matsumoto stepped in, hair tied back, face still creased from sleep. A tablet in one hand, scanner in the other. Lena pinged me, she said quietly. Said you got something in your eye. Cold water from a vent seam, I said. Kira's expression shifted, just slightly, like that meant more to her than she wanted to show. Describe exactly what you saw. I met her gaze, the memory of those eyes, milky, glowing, emotionless and curious, hit me like the pressure outside the hull. There was a face, I said, not human, staring at me through the duct, smiling. Kira froze. Kira? I said. She swallowed once. You're not the first to report something in the ducts. My stomach tightened. Who else? She kept her eyes on the scanner while she spoke. About a month ago, Caspian said he saw reflections in one of the access vents outside ROV Dock 2. Shapes moving. I dismissed it as light scatter. Last week, Lena swore she heard whispering in the ventilation during night cycle. Elijah said he felt something brush his boot while working under a lower intake grate. Captain Omar? I asked. He told us all to shut up and stop spooking each other. Of course he did. Kira leaned in, gently pushed my eyelid open, and scanned the cornea. The device beeped twice. Her voice dropped a register. Sebastian, there's particulate residue on your eye surface. Not metal, not rust, organic. My pulse thudded. What kind of organic? She showed me the tiny display. Microscopic structures rotating in false color. Filament strands, spiral, segmented, transparent. Pale threads like tiny worms or microbial tendrils, except not random, arranged, like something had aligned itself. Kira whispered, This looks like deep vent extremophile tissue. That's impossible, I said. That duct shouldn't be connected to any external intake. It isn't. She stepped back, voice trembling just a little. It got in anyway. The medbay lights flickered again. Not a glitch, a pulse, like something passing across the station's external floodlights. Then I heard it, a faint echo through the duct above us. Not dripping this time, something sliding. Slow, long, deliberate. Kira's eyes darted up toward the ceiling. Sebastian, listen. I already was. There was movement in the duct right above medbay. Something crawling, something heavy enough to vibrate, slow enough to be confident. Kira whispered, It's inside the vents. I thought of that sideways face, that faint, curious smile, the way it moved closer without sound, the cold drilling into my eye. Kira stepped backward toward the hatch. We need Omar, she whispered. Now. But before she hit the call panel, a new sound came through the station PA. A low, static burst, then a voice. All personnel to control, immediately. Omar. He sounded strained, almost breathless. Kira and I locked eyes. Whatever I saw in that vent wasn't alone. It had been watching more than me. and Omar sounded like someone who finally realized something else was down here with us. Chapter 3. Kira and I moved fast through Ring C, not running. Running inside an underwater station was asking for a slip and skull fracture, but fast enough our footsteps echoed against the curved metal walls. Every vent we passed, every junction overhead seemed to breathe with us. Control sat in the central hub. Glass panel doors, reinforced, lined with screens showing station vitals, external cams, sonar feeds, pressure graphs. Omar stood at the main console, jaw locked, eyes fixed on a flickering sonar display. Elijah was already there, helmet in hand, grease stains on his sleeves. Lena sat at the comms panel, headset crooked, her face pale. Caspian lingered near the back, trying to make himself small. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Omar didn't even look up when we entered. Everyone closed the doors. They shut with a pneumatic hiss. "Status?" I asked, breathing harder than I wanted them to hear. Omar nodded toward the monitors. External cameras have intermittent visibility. Floodlights dimmed twice in the last 5 minutes. We're getting a strange shift on the bottom sonar. Look. The screen showed the usual silt fog, the drifting marine snow, until the grid flickered, warped, and something massive slid across the lower right quadrant. A whale? Elijah offered weakly. "No," Lena said. "Wrong direction. It's moving against the current." Caspian whispered, "It looks like land." We all stared. For a moment the sonar was clean again, nothing but the abyssal plain. Then a shape reappeared, huge, like a ridge on the sea floor had risen, for just a second, then sank. Kira's voice trembled. "The seafloor doesn't move like that." Omar turned to her, eyes sharp. "Unless it's not the seafloor." The words hung in the sterile air like a death sentence. Something thudded against the station hull, soft, almost gentle. A touch, like an enormous fingertip pressing on the outside. We all froze. Another thud. Closer. Elijah's face went sheet white. Pressure shift on port side, just a hair, but the hull groaned, long, metallic, like a submarine whale call. I felt the vibration in my ribs. "Everyone stay calm," Omar said, voice tight. "This could be thermal expansion, or—" He didn't finish. A vent panel above the comm station clicked. Kira's eyes shot upward. Lena's voice cracked. "Oh God." Something dripped onto her console. A clean, clear drop, followed by another. "Seal that vent," Omar barked. Elijah reached for the maintenance panel, stepping onto the console chair, hands up to unscrew the grate. The metal fasteners turned easily, too easily, like they'd been loosened from the inside. He got the first one off. The second one, almost got it, he muttered. The third fastener came loose in his hand. The grate dropped an inch, hanging by the last screw. That's when something pale shot out of the gap, fast, a limb, eel-like and segmented, wrapping around Elijah's wrist before any of us could react. A second appendage followed, thinner, pointed, jabbing into his suit at the shoulder seam like a needle punching through fabric. Elijah gasped. His eyes went wide. His whole body jolted like he'd been hit with electricity. "Get it off him!" Kira screamed. I lunged without thinking, grabbing Elijah by the waist, pulling him back. But something yanked from above with inhuman force. The thing had leverage. It had strength we couldn't match. "Sebastian!" Elijah screamed. His voice was high, panicked, nothing like the easy grin he'd had an hour ago. Kira grabbed his legs. I grabbed his torso. Lena hit the emergency hatch lockdown, but the thing pulled harder. It dragged Elijah upward toward the vent, body twisting unnaturally, suit fabric tearing like paper. The limb coiled tighter around his wrist. I heard the bone crack. Elijah's scream went ragged, desperate. Another drop of that clear water fell and hit his cheek. Where it touched, his skin turned red, then white, like frostbite spreading in seconds. He screamed like it burned. "Cut him loose!" Omar yelled. "Cut him loose!" But we had nothing to cut with. No knife, no tool, just our hands. The vent seal tore open wider. Metal shrieked. The grate snapped loose and clattered to the floor. Something uncoiled from the darkness above. Too fast, too long, too many segments. I saw white, glowing orbs, like eyes, sliding past each other in shifting rows. Not 2 eyes, not 3. More, a line of them, pulsing faintly. The thing's grip shifted. It pulled Elijah's arm further into the duct. His shoulder dislocated with a wet pop. He made a sound I'll never forget. Not quite a scream, more like the air being forced out of a balloon. "Elijah, hold on," Kira shouted, but he couldn't hold on. The thing was too strong. It yanked again, and this time Elijah's whole upper body was dragged into the vent. His legs kicked wildly. His free hand clawed at the edge of the opening, fingers scraping metal, nails tearing. Blood smeared across the console. Then the vent opening flexed outward, impossibly wide, like a throat opening to swallow. Elijah's scream cut off, choked. His body jerked once, violently, then his legs went limp. He was pulled the rest of the way into the duct with a wet, dragging sound that sank into my bones. Silence, just dripping. One last drop fell onto the chair where Elijah had been standing. Kira's voice barely existed. "They're inside the station." Omar didn't shout, didn't swear. His voice was low, broken glass steady. "No one moves alone. Not for a second. We lock every vent, every door. We alert the surface." Lena spun back to her console, fingers shaking, trying to raise the surface vessel. Static, more static, then a whispering sound through the channel. Not a voice, a pattern. Like something imitating speech but without knowing how. Caspian pressed against the wall, shaking hard enough I could see it in his shoulders. "They're not hunting us," he whispered. "They don't eat us. They learn us." Something massive slid along the outer hull. Slow, like a glacier shifting. The lights dimmed again. Not a failure, a shadow. And for the first time since we came down here, I realized something terrifying. We had never been alone at 5,000 feet. We had been standing inside something old, and now it finally knew we were here. Chapter 4. Alert klaxons echoed through Nautilus Station, 13 inches pulsing waves. Not the shrill evacuation alarm. This was lower, heavier, like a heartbeat amplified through steel. External breach potential. No one had ever heard it outside drills. Emergency lights dropped the station into red shadows. Every reflection looked like blood smeared on metal. Omar slammed the emergency seal on the control vent, locking the twisted opening with a reinforced plate. It wouldn't stop anything capable of tearing through steel, but at least nothing else would drop on our heads for the moment. "We're losing hull integrity warnings on Ring D," Lena said, voice shaking. "Sensors show water intrusion in the lower maintenance tunnel, but the pressure readings are wrong. It's like something's displacing the water. Like..." She cut herself off, eyes wide. "Like there's a mass inside the tunnel. A mass, not water. Something moving." Omar didn't hesitate. "We suit up. Now." The dive bay was already standing in emergency lighting when we arrived. High ceilings, a grated floor, yellow railings around a large central pool that opened directly into the ocean through a pressure seal. The suits hung like suspended bodies along the rack, heavy, articulated models rated for depth spectrum repairs. Elijah's suit still hung among them, his name stenciled across the helmet. Kira flinched as she passed it. I did too. "Surface vessel isn't responding," Lena said, checking her wrist comm. "We're not transmitting out. Something's interfering with the antenna array." Omar didn't look surprised. "Whatever's out there is bigger than our communications window. If it's touching the hull, it's touching the signal." Or blocking it, Kira added. Or substituting it, Caspian mumbled. No one corrected him. We climbed into the suits. Thick, jointed arms, reinforced helmets, external floodlights strapped at the shoulder, painfully slow to put on, even with auto seals. My left eye still burned with that unnatural cold. The moment my helmet pressurized, the hum of the station dulled, like I'd been dropped into deep water already. Omar's voice crackled through suit comms. This is a 3-person exterior. Rykard, Matsumoto, with me. Hoffman and Lee stay inside and monitor systems. If we lose comms... If? Lena said. When? Omar corrected stiffly. If we lose comms, you lock down and wait for return signal. Understood? Lena's voice was small. Understood. A hydraulic arm lowered us onto the edge of the pool. Beneath, black water heaved gently, lit only by internal floods. The station groaned like something enormous was pressing a slow hand against its side. We stepped into the pool, one heavy step, then another, and sank beneath the surface. My suit lights cut a pale tunnel through the dark. Tiny particles drifted around us like snow. 5,000 feet down, water is a physical force, a crushing, frozen weight pressing on every surface. Even through reinforced plating, I could feel it. Like the ocean wanted in. Keep proximity tight, Omar said. Watch each other's tethers. We moved along the hull toward the lower ring, following textured panels designed for suits to brace against. Through the suit audio, I could hear something. Low, rhythmic pulses. Like distant thunder, except there is no thunder at this depth. Kira's voice was barely above a whisper. Sebastian, look at the hull. I turned my lights down along the station's curved plating. Something glistened. Not water, not algae. A translucent film spread across the hull like a net of clear veins, pulsing faintly with blue bioluminescence underneath. It stretched across rivets and joints like living tissue adhering itself to metal. Kira leaned in, suit camera recording. This isn't corrosion. This is organic. It's growing. Omar moved closer. Do not touch it. A slow vibration slid through the hull, like something massive shifting on the other side. Kira gasped. I just saw movement in the film, like fluid flow. I swallowed hard. It's feeding. Omar's voice went dead flat. We move. Keep eyes up. We reached the lower maintenance access, a reinforced external panel half covered by the growing membrane. Omar raised the repair cutter, a heavy plasma tool mounted to the arm of his suit. The membrane twitched, like it sensed the motion. Omar activated the cutter. A bright arc of light sliced into the tissue. The membrane pulled away, not by heat, but by choice. As if retreating deeper between hull layers, that's when my suit lights caught movement in the darkness below us. Something long and pale drifted upward from the trench side of the station. Eel-like, but thicker, slow and deliberate, glowing faintly along its length. Another shape followed, then another. Kira's breath hitched. They're surrounding us. Omar turned slowly, voice steady. Stay calm. They're observing. One of the things passed right in front of my visor. Smooth, glassy, with faintly human contours like they were imitating a shape rather than being one. As it drifted, its side pressed against my helmet for a fraction of a second. Cold, all-consuming cold. My visor fogged instantly. A whisper of frost crept at the edges. Sebastian, back up, Kira shouted. I'm fine, just... The thing drifted away. My vision returned, but something lingered. An after-image burned into my brain. 3 glowing orbs, arranged like eyes in a vertical line. Something huge passed overhead, blocking what little station light we had. Everything went dark for a moment, like a cloud had covered the sun, except there were no clouds down here. There was only something larger. Kira's voice was shaking now. Omar, Something just crossed above us. Large mass, way larger. Omar didn't answer immediately. Then, all divers, tethers in, return to moon pool, now. We turned toward the pool, but halfway there, something tugged at my boot. Not a snag, a pull. Something's got my leg, I yelled. Kira spun her lights toward me, but nothing was visible, just drifting silt. The pull vanished. Omar grabbed my arm, hauling me toward the pool. Move! As we reached the entry lip, the membrane on the hull beneath us pulsed, a slow, rhythmic convulsion, like breathing, deep, slow, ancient, and then the grappler alarm went off inside the station. Lena's panicked voice cutting through comms. Sebastian, Kira, Omar, something just breached internal Ring D. We can hear it moving inside the walls. Oh God! A crash, a scream, then static, and behind us, in the dark water, something enormous shifted, its mass blocking everything, its glow stretching like nerve tendrils across the void. We didn't need to see a face to understand the truth. What we thought were creatures were just parts, cells, pieces of something older than the trench itself, and it was waking up. Chapter 5. Water was still sluicing off our suits when we climbed out of the moon pool. I ripped my helmet off before the autolock finished. Oxygen tasted like metal. Kira followed, eyes wide, scanning every vent like they were gun barrels pointed at us. Omar slammed the bay lockdown, sealing the moon pool doors behind us. Lena, report! He barked into his wrist, calm, only static, then a wet, scraping sound through the channel, like something was dragging along the mic. Kira flinched. She said Ring D. Omar didn't wait. Move! Emergency strobes flickered along the walls, pulsing from red to black to red, like we were inside something's beating heart. As we moved, suit boots clanged against metal, echoing like footsteps in a tomb. We hit the junction leading toward Ring D. Water streaked the floor, not pooled, dragged, as if something heavy, or many somethings, had slid through. Kira crouched. This isn't coming from flooding. This was carried. Omar pushed forward, jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. Lena! Caspian! Respond now! Static answered, followed by a faint, wet, whispering noise. Not voices, more like breathing, but layered, like dozens of lungs working together. My skin crawled. The door was open. Ring D hatch, heavy, reinforced, stood halfway open, bent outward, bent. Nothing inside the station was strong enough to deform that metal. Kira stared at the twisted hinge. Seb, that's outer-grade titanium. It's not outer-grade anymore, I said. We edged inside. Lights flickered overhead. A maintenance cart lay overturned, tools scattered. One of the floor grates was torn up, bent like someone tried to crawl down then got yanked backward. Something had struggled here. A smear of moisture led down the dark corridor, not blood. Just clear water, but shimmering faintly, like bioluminescence mixed with it. Weapons? I whispered. Omar didn't even look at me. We have none. Focus. We found Caspian slumped against the wall halfway down the corridor, suit half on, helmet still clutched in shaking hands. He wasn't bleeding. He wasn't even scratched. He was staring upward at the ceiling vent, eyes wide and empty, like his consciousness was still stuck there. Caspian! Kira crouched, grabbed his shoulder. Look at me! He blinked slowly, then looked at us. It showed me something. His voice was hollow, stripped. What did you see? Omar demanded. Caspian swallowed hard. It wasn't a face. It was like looking into an open wound that wasn't supposed to exist, and it knew I was looking. He trembled violently. A noise overhead. Metal scraped above us, slow and patient, like claws or limbs, dragging along inside the duct. The ceiling flexed, flexed as something heavy shifted above it. We all froze. Caspian whispered, "It learns when we react. It waits for it." That was when the vent above us bulged outward, just a little, like something pressing a palm against thin skin. Testing. Omar grabbed Caspian by the collar, hauling him up. "Move." But Caspian didn't move his legs on his own. Omar practically dragged him. Kira and I backed down the corridor, eyes glued to that vent, waiting for it to tear open. Nothing came through. That was somehow worse. The control hatch was closed now, but something lay just inside the small window, blocking the lower corner. A headset. Lena's. Omar's breath hitched. Just a tremor, but enough. He opened the hatch manually, just enough to slip through. Control was dark, monitors dead, chairs overturned, and in the corner, near the comms panel, we found her, Lena. What was left of her, she was slumped against the wall, headset cord still wrapped around her wrists like she'd tried to hold onto something real. Her suit was torn open at the chest, fabric shredded cleanly, like something had peeled it back with surgical precision. The skin beneath was pale, too pale. Translucent in places, like the membrane we'd seen on the hull. Blue veins pulsed faintly beneath the surface, not blood vessels, something else. Filaments, threads, growing. Her eyes were open, but the pupils were gone, just smooth, milky orbs that caught the emergency lights and reflected them back wrong, like looking into the eyes of something deep sea. Her mouth hung open slightly, no sound, but her chest rose and fell, slow, rhythmic, not breathing, something else. Kira's hand went to her mouth. Oh God. She's still. She's not alive, Omar said flatly. Not anymore. But even as he said it, Lena's head turned, slow, mechanical. Her neck made a soft clicking sound, like cartilage that had been rearranged. Those milky eyes fixed on me, her lips moved. No voice came out, but I could read the shape of the words. Sebastian. The cold behind my left eye pulsed in response. Kira grabbed my arm. "We need to go. Now." Lena's hand twitched, fingers flexing. The filaments beneath her skin pulsed brighter. Omar stepped between us and what used to be Lena. "Back out. Slow. Don't run." We backed toward the hatch. Lena's body jerked once, violently, then went still. The overhead PA clicked. A voice came through, wet, distorted, stretched through static. Sebastian. Not Lena, not any of us. Something trying to sound like us. Then another voice layered underneath it. Open. Hatch. Open. Not a request. A command. Omar stepped forward and slapped the PA override, killing the channel. He turned to us, face white steel. No more vents. No more comms. We shut everything down and plan exit. If we stay here, we die. Kira's voice cracked. Surface vessel isn't responding. Then we go up without permission, Omar said. We abandon station. Caspian shook his head violently. It won't let us leave. It's already wrapped around the hull. We're inside its reach. Every alarm we set off, it heard. Every shout, it learned. He stared straight at me. And when it touched you, Sebastian, it marked you. The lights flickered again, not random this time, in a slow, rhythmic pattern, almost like breathing, and suddenly I realized the station wasn't flickering. Something outside was passing between us and the lights, something enormous, something bigger than Nautilus, something waking. Chapter 6. The station groaned again, long, low, like metal under breath rather than pressure. Omar kept pacing the control deck, eyes flicking between dead monitors and emergency override panels like he could force the station to obey by sheer will. Emergency ascent, he said finally. Manual override. Moon pool seals. Ballast release. We blow tanks and ride the station to the surface. Kira stared at him. We lose pressure control. We risk a catastrophic breach. We're already in one, Omar snapped. Staying here is suicide. I watched the overhead vents while they argued, expecting them to bulge again. My left eye throbbed, cold, pulsing behind the iris, like something was still touching it from the inside. That's when a voice returned on the comm channel, except it wasn't a voice. Not exactly. Sebastian. Wet. Slurred. Too many echoes underneath the words. Kira flinched. Is that? I shook my head. No, it's not. Omar slammed the comm cutoff again. No external, no internal. We shut everything down until ascent. Caspian stood perfectly still at the corner of the room, shaking. It's inside the wires now. It's using signal like we use breathing. None of us corrected him. We headed down the narrow passage toward the manual ballast controls. Every step echoed through the corridor like walking inside a sleeping animal. Moisture beaded along seams now, not clean droplets. Thicker, gelatin-like, almost like the membrane outside was pushing inward. Kira brushed a finger across a droplet on the wall. It stretched like mucus. This is the same material from the hull, she whispered. It's inside now. We reached the manual ballast room. Secondary controls, analog switches, heavy mechanical valves. Omar threw the override lever. Nothing. He hit it harder. Valves groaned but didn't shift. Kira's face drained. The ballast is being held. Held? Omar growled. By what? Before she could answer, the station lights dimmed to near black. Only emergency floor strips glowed, thin red lines along the floor. Then the hull moaned, not from movement. From pressure outside increasing, Kira looked up at the ceiling, horrified. It's compressing us. A whisper slid through my skull, not through comms. Inside my thoughts like a memory I didn't remember having, closer. I stumbled back, clutching the side of my helmet. Kira grabbed my arm. Sebastian? Seb? But it wasn't fear in her face. It was recognition. You heard it too, I whispered. She nodded slowly. Omar looked at us both. What are you two? Then he froze, hands shaking visibly. Omar, Kira said. You heard it. He didn't speak, didn't have to. Something was moving behind his eyes, like he was listening to another voice layered under ours. Caspian backed away from us all, eyes wide. It doesn't need comms anymore. The lights flickered again, slow, pulsing, dark, red, heartbeat rhythm, large, rhythmic, ancient. Kira's voice went paper-thin. That's not the station. That's something outside. The entire station suddenly tilted. A heavy lurch like Nautilus was being pulled sideways by something massive. We slammed against the wall. Metal screamed. Somewhere deep in the lower ring, something impacted the hull, hard enough that we all felt it in our bones. Caspian looked at me like a child, realizing monsters are real. It's wrapping around us. Then, the whisper inside my head came again, clearer this time. Deeper. Stay. Deeper. Not a command, an invitation. Kira's face went pale. It doesn't want us to leave. Omar shoved us all forward. We're going to the top module. We detach command pod and ascend that way. Command pod's not equipped for full crew, Kira argued. It is tonight, Omar growled. We ran. Halfway up the ladder to the upper ring, I saw something at the top of the shaft. A human silhouette. Elijah, suit dented, visor cracked, standing perfectly still, staring down at me. Eli? I whispered before my brain could stop me. But Kira saw nothing. Seb, there's no one there. Elijah vanished like he'd stepped backward into smoke. I climbed faster, heart slamming against my ribs. We reached the upper command hatch. Omar slapped the override. The hatch cycled open, but immediately a blast of cold air poured down on us, like the top module was sitting inside a freezer. Caspian's teeth chattered audibly. Why is it cold up here? Heat circulation shouldn't. The hatchway beyond was dark. No power, no lights, just black. And in that black, a faint blue pulse, like the glow of veins under translucent skin. Kira's voice broke in a whisper. It's already in the pod. Chapter 7. Omar swept his flashlight into the dark pod. The beam caught mist hanging in the air, cold vapor rolling like smoke off ice. Every surface was wet, not dripping, beaded. Like condensation formed instantly whenever warm air hit whatever was inside here. He stepped in first. I followed, pulse hammering inside my skull. Kira came last, dragging Caspian by the sleeve like she was afraid if she let go, he'd wander into the vents. The command pod had 8 seats and a full control array. Now the seats were empty, harnesses hanging loose, belts unbuckled like someone had abandoned them in a rush. Omar moved toward the control interface. Kira stopped dead, eyes narrowing. Sebastian. What? She pointed at the console's touch surface. Along the edge, forming a visible line, was a frost outline shaped like a handprint, but too long, fingers unnaturally jointed. It wasn't melting, it was growing ice outward. Omar didn't care. He powered the system anyway. Nothing. Kira took a step closer to the frost pattern, drawn in like she couldn't help it. The temperature, it's below freezing in here, but we're surrounded by warm water outside. This makes no sense. Caspian murmured behind us. Maybe it's not cold. Maybe it's pulling heat. Maybe it eats it. Then the PA in the pod clicked alive on its own. Sebastian. That voice again. Wet, layered, like something trying to crawl into language and failing. Kira turned off the PA. It clicked back on by itself. Open. Stay. Omar kicked the master breaker. Darkness swallowed everything. Outside the pod window, the ocean was pitch, but something pulsed far beyond the glass. Soft blue glows like ripples in liquid tissue. Kira exhaled one word. Circulation. Caspian nodded, trembling uncontrollably. It's not water out there. Not really. That membrane on the hull? It's everywhere now. We're not in the ocean. We're inside it. Something moved against the outer hull, long and slow, casting a shadow across the window like a continent sliding past. A deep groan vibrated through the structure, slow, rhythmic, rising, then fading. Not metal strain, breathing. Realization hit me like the cold behind my eye. It wasn't squeezing us. It was compressing and releasing, like lungs, like respiration. Kira whispered, "We're in its respiratory system." Omar snapped, "Everyone stays together. Back to core station. We initiate emergency dive suits, detach the ROV emergency pod, and..." A sudden violent impact cracked the viewport. Just a hairline, but enough to throw us backward. A glowing shape slid past the window, a pale vertical line of 3 bioluminescent orbs staring in. I didn't breathe. Then the thing outside pressed its head against the glass, sideways, like it remembered the position from the vent. The same faint, curious smile, only larger now. Much larger, Caspian screamed. The glass didn't break, but the cold coming through it was brutal. Frost crawling outward like veins across the frame. Kira grabbed my arm, eyes wide with horror. "Sebastian, can you hear it talking inside your head?" I swallowed. My vision blurred. The cold behind my left eye pulsed, and a voice slipped clean into my mind like water pouring into an open mouth. Closer. No sound, no vibration, just thought. Not mine. Omar pulled us toward the hatch. "We're leaving this module now." We fled, down the ladder, through the ring, back into the belly of the station while the hull groaned again like an ancient beast shifting in sleep. The vents above us pulsed with pale blue veins. And all at once I understood. Nautilus Station 13 was no longer a research facility. It was part of something alive. We hadn't discovered the deep. The deep had been waiting for us. Chapter 8. We made it back to the central junction before Omar stopped us. His hand went up, fist clenched, the universal sign for halt. "Listen," he whispered. We all went still. At first, nothing. Just the ever-present hum of the station, the distant thud of pumps. Then I heard it. A soft, rhythmic sound, almost musical. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from somewhere ahead of us, down the corridor that led to the ROV bay. "Is that?" Kira started. "Movement," Omar finished. "Something's in the bay." Caspian made a small, whimpering sound. "We can't go back the way we came. The vents." "I know," Omar said. He turned to us, face set in grim lines. "ROV bay has an emergency pod. Single occupant, but it's rated for emergency ascent. If we can get to it." "If," I said. "If," he agreed. We moved forward, slow and careful. The tapping sound grew louder, more insistent, like something was testing the hull from the inside. Feeling for weak points, the ROV bay hatch stood open. Emergency lights cast everything in red. The two ROV units sat in their docking cradles, silent and dark. But the emergency pod hatch on the far wall was intact, sealed, untouched. "There," Omar said. "We get that open. We." The tapping stopped. Everything went silent. Too silent. Kira's breath hitched. Where did it go? Then the ceiling vent above us bulged. Not slowly this time. Fast. The metal screamed, tore, and something large dropped through. It hit the deck with a wet thud. For a moment, none of us moved. The thing that had been Lena stood in the center of the room. Her body bent wrong, joints hyperextended, spine curved like she was held up by invisible wires. The filaments beneath her skin pulsed bright blue now, visible through the translucent tissue. Her head tilted at an angle no human neck should allow. Those milky eyes fixed on Omar. Her mouth opened. Too wide. The jaw unhinged like a snake's, and something else was visible in the back of her throat. Movement. Pale structures flexing. Reaching. "Captain." The voice came from her, but layered, multiple tones at once. "Stay. With us. Deeper." Omar's hand went to his belt. He had a flare gun clipped there, standard emergency kit. He pulled it free, aimed it at what used to be Lena. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. He fired. The flare hit her center mass and erupted in a burst of red light and chemical fire. The thing that was, Lena shrieked, a sound that wasn't human, wasn't animal, something else entirely. The filaments beneath her skin writhed and pulsed, trying to put out the fire, but the chemical burn was too fast. She collapsed, still burning, still twitching, but the shriek had done something. The vents all around us started to vibrate, a low hum building to a roar. "They're coming!" Caspian screamed. Omar grabbed the emergency pod hatch and yanked the manual release. The door hissed open. Inside, a single seat, basic life support, emergency beacon. "Get in," Omar said, looking at me. "What?" "No. There's only room for one," he said. His voice was calm. Final. "You're going. That's an order." "Omar," Kira started. He grabbed me by the shoulder, shoved me toward the pod. "You saw it first. You're marked. If anyone's going to warn the surface what's down here, it's you." The vents around us buckled. Metal tore. Pale shapes started to emerge from the openings, sliding through like eels through water. Omar pulled a second flare from his belt. Then a third. "I'll buy you time. Get in. Seal it. Go." "I can't just..." Now, Rykard." The authority in his voice overrode everything else. Kira pushed me toward the pod. "Go. We'll hold them." "Kira." She pressed something into my hand, the sample vial from my pocket, the one I'd taken from the first drip. "Get this to the surface. Make them understand." I looked at Omar, at Kira, at Caspian, who was already backing toward the far wall, eyes wide with terror. The pale things were fully emerging now. 3 of them, 4, more. Sliding across the deck with that same wet, patient movement, I climbed into the pod. Omar slammed the hatch behind me. Through the small porthole window, I saw him step forward, flares in hand. Kira was beside him, holding a pipe wrench like a club. Caspian had found a piece of broken metal. The things moved closer. Omar looked back at me one last time. His lips moved. I couldn't hear through the sealed hatch, but I could read the words. Tell them we were here. Then he turned back and fired the second flare. The pod's auto-sequence engaged. I felt the clamps release, the pressure seals activate. The ascent timer started counting down. Through the window, I saw the ROV bay erupt in fire and light. The pale thing shrieked and writhed. Omar stood in the center of it all, still firing, still fighting. Then the pod launched. The acceleration slammed me back into the seat. Water rushed past the porthole. I was ascending. Fast. Too fast. Emergency protocol didn't care about decompression sickness. It just wanted you away from whatever was happening. I watched Nautilus Station 13 fall away beneath me, the lights flickering. The hull covered in that glowing membrane. And something else. Something vast moving around it, coiling, pulsing. The station wasn't sinking. It was being pulled down. The timer hit 0. Darkness swallowed the view below. I was alone, ascending through 5,000 feet of black water with nothing but a sample vial in my hand and the cold burning behind my left eye. The pod shook violently as it climbed. Emergency ascent wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed for survival, and survival meant speed. The hull groaned around me, compensating for the rapid pressure change. My ears popped, then popped again. The pain was sharp, immediate. I pressed my face against the small porthole window, watching Nautilus Station 13 disappear into the black below. The glowing membrane pulsed one last time, bright blue, then faded. The station was gone, swallowed by the dark or pulled down into it. The pod's interior was barely larger than a coffin. 1 seat, basic life support, a small panel of blinking lights that told me oxygen was flowing and the ascent was on track. 4,000 feet to go, then 3,000. The timer counted down with mechanical indifference. My left eye throbbed, not just cold anymore, something else, a pressure behind it, like something was trying to push through from the inside. I squeezed my eyes shut, tried to focus on breathing. In, out, in, out. That's when I heard it. A voice, faint and distant, coming through the pod's hull like it was traveling through the water itself. Sebastian. My eyes snapped open. Nothing outside the porthole, just darkness and the occasional flicker of bioluminescent organisms drifting past. "You left us." The voice was clearer now. I recognized it. "Elijah." "No," I whispered. "You're not real. You're dead." "We're not dead. We're deeper. Come back." The cold behind my eye pulsed in rhythm with the words. I pressed my palm against it, tried to will the sensation away. My hand came away wet. Not tears. Something else. Clear. Ice. Cold. The same liquid from the vents. Jesus Christ, I muttered. The porthole fogged over. Not from my breath, I wasn't facing it. The condensation formed from the outside, spreading across the glass in crystalline patterns. Like frost, like something out there was pressing against the pod, leaving its mark. Through the fog, I saw movement. A shape drifted past the window, long, pale, glowing faintly, then another. They were following me up. "You can't leave. You're marked. You're ours." This time the voice was Kira's. I shook my head violently. "You're not real. None of this is real." But the shapes outside multiplied. 3, 5, a dozen. They circled the pod like sharks, slow and patient, their bioluminescent bodies leaving trails of blue light in the water. One of them pressed against the porthole. A face appeared in the fogged glass. Not quite human, not quite anything else. Grayish, translucent skin. No hair, milky eyes that glowed from within. It smiled, the same faint, curious smile I'd seen in the vent. My heart hammered. I couldn't look away. The thing tilted its head, studying me through the glass like I was something fascinating, something new. Then it opened its mouth. The jaw unhinged impossibly wide, and I saw inside. Not teeth, not a throat, just pale, flexing structures and a darkness that seemed to go on forever. It pressed closer. The porthole glass creaked. "No, no, no." I slammed my fist against the panel, trying to make the pod go faster. The timer didn't care. 2,000 feet. 1,900. 1,800. The thing outside pulled back slightly. Then another face appeared next to it, and another. They crowded against the porthole, pressing, staring, all of them with those same milky eyes and impossible smiles. "Join us. Deeper. Always deeper." The voices weren't coming through the hull anymore. They were inside my head. Multiple voices, layered, speaking in unison. Omar, Kira, Elijah, Lena, Caspian. All of them. "It's beautiful down here. You'll see. Come back." My vision blurred. The cold behind my eyes spread, creeping through my skull like ice forming in water. I could feel it branching, growing, reaching. The pod shuddered. The timer hit 1,000 feet. The faces outside pulled back. One by one, they drifted away, dissolving into the darkness like they'd never been there. The porthole cleared. I was alone again. But the voices didn't stop. "We're waiting. Always waiting. You'll come back." The cold pulsed. Once, twice, then settled into a steady, rhythmic throb, like a heartbeat, but not mine. 500 feet. The water outside started to lighten. Not much. Just enough to see particles drifting. Marine snow. Normal ocean. 200 feet. I could see faint light filtering down from above. Dawn or dusk. I'd lost track of time. 100 feet. The pod's emergency beacon started screaming. A high-pitched wail designed to cut through everything. Help was coming. 50 feet. The voices faded to whispers. Marked. Ours. Always. The pod broke the surface with a violent lurch. Water sprayed across the porthole. I gasped, sucking in air even though the life support had been fine the whole time. Sunlight. Real, actual sunlight. I pressed my face against the glass and sobbed. Not from relief. From something else. Something I couldn't name. Because even as the recovery vessel's light swept across the water, even as I heard voices shouting outside, human voices, real voices, the cold behind my eye pulsed one more time, gentle, patient, reminding me it hadn't let me go, it had let me leave. There's a difference. The pod broke the surface 40 minutes later, emergency beacons screaming into the night. A recovery vessel found me before dawn. They asked what happened. I told them. They didn't believe me. Nautilus Station 13 is officially listed as lost due to catastrophic pressure failure. 6 crew members presumed dead. The investigation found nothing. No bodies, no wreckage. Just empty ocean where the station used to be. But I know the truth. They're still down there. Omar, Kira, Elijah, Lena, Caspian, changed, transformed. part of something that doesn't have a name in any language we speak. And sometimes, late at night, when I close my eyes, I can still feel that cold behind my left eye, still hear that voice. Closer. The doctors say it's trauma, PTSD, phantom sensation, but I know better. It marked me. And one day, I think it's going to call me back down, because the deep doesn't forget. And it's still learning. Folklore note. The ocean covers 71% of our planet. We've explored less than 5% of it. In that unexplored darkness, at depths where pressure would crush a human body like a tin can, life exists. Not the life we understand, not plants and animals with familiar rules, but organisms that operate on principles we're still trying to comprehend. Deep-sea gigantism. Creatures growing to impossible sizes in the crushing dark. Extremophiles that thrive in conditions that would kill anything else on Earth. Bioluminescence that evolved independently dozens of times, as if light itself is trying to find a way into the abyss. And then there are the sounds. In 1997, NOAA detected an ultra-low frequency sound in the Pacific Ocean so loud it was heard on sensors over 3,000 miles away. They called it the bloop. It matched the acoustic profile of a living creature, but it was far, far larger than any known animal, bigger than a blue whale, bigger than anything that should exist. They claimed it was icebergs, glacial calving, but the sound was too organic, too deliberate. In deep-sea mythology from cultures around the world, there are stories of things that live at the bottom. Not separate creatures, but parts of something immense. Colony organisms on a scale we've never witnessed. The indigenous peoples of the Pacific Islands spoke of Taniwha, massive beings that lived in the deep places and would occasionally drag entire islands beneath the waves. Norse sailors spoke of the Hafgufa, a creature so large it was mistaken for an island until it moved. Japanese fishermen whispered about the Namazu, a giant catfish that lived beneath the earth and ocean, causing earthquakes when it stirred, all of them describing the same thing, something vast. Something old, something that lives at the boundary between earth and water, between alive and geological. Scientists have discovered massive bacterial mats in the Mariana Trench, single organisms covering acres of seafloor, operating as one entity despite being physically separate. They've found fungal networks beneath forests that span continents, thinking and reacting as unified consciousness. What if something like that existed in the deep? What if it had been there for millions of years, patient and slow, until we finally dropped our stations low enough to touch it? The warnings were always there. Indigenous cultures knew. They knew not to disturb the deep places, not to light fires where the ocean breathed, not to drill where the pressure kept old things sleeping. We didn't listen. We built our research stations, dropped them 5,000 feet down, anchored them in the silt, and something noticed. The ocean is not empty. It's full of things we haven't named, haven't classified, haven't understood, and some of those things are still learning what we are, still deciding what to do with us. The people of Nautilus Station 13 were the first to meet something from the true deep. They won't be the last. Because we're still building stations, still dropping sensors, still drilling deeper, still waking things that were better left to sleep. The ocean remembers. And it's patient, and one day, it's going to decide we've gone deep enough. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrorific tale from the vault. Poor old Sebastian. Thought he could just climb into a little pod and escape. Thought the surface meant safety. But some things don't let go that easily. Some things mark you, brand you. And that cold behind his eye, that's not trauma, kiddies. That's a reminder. The deep is patient, the deep remembers, and one day it's going to call him back down. Just how we love it. If this story crawled under your skin the right way, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day at 8 p.m. Central, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you'll never look at deep-sea research stations the same way again, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Have you ever been deep underwater? Ever felt like something was watching you from the dark? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Remember, the ocean covers 71% of our planet. We've explored less than 5% of it, and what we haven't explored, it's been exploring us. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the depths. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and the deep is always listening.